So Joe Kennedy, your book and your movie is called Average Joe, but it's not really an average story. So I want to have you just give us a little bit of background, how you came up to foster care. Here you're a little bit of a troublemaker.
A little bit, tiny bit.
Yeah. How you met your wife, and then some of the events that took place that you made decisions that actually helped change your life and set you on a different trajectory. So why don't you just give us a little bit of that backstory?
Yeah, it started out unwanted birth. My parents, my dad went off to go fight in Vietnam, and he came home to a pregnant girl. And you can imagine how his response was with that. So instead of being aborted, thank the Lord that I was actually put up for adoption. I was put into a good Catholic family that couldn't have kids. And I don't know, through the miracle of science and then a little bit of help of God, I think they started popping out kids left and right. And I don't know, about the sixth litter, they really didn't need me anymore. So you can imagine what it was like. And I became a real angry kid. And I didn't know which way to go. And I just kept making the same mistakes, mostly fighting. I was just so angry about everything in life and didn't know why. So fighting was my answer to everything, to every single thing. I was always fighting. I got kicked out of, I don't know, 6, 8 different schools. I think when we counted it up, it was 12 different schools out of the 12 years I went to school. I lived at different group homes, foster homes, a couple boys' homes. And I was on my way to being locked up, and there was just no other way around it. And by the grace of God, I ended up at a Christian boys' school. And I thought, when you're surrounded by people that are good Christian people, I guess you say, that it's really easy to put on your suit, wearing God. And while I was there, we read the Bible and had, we went to church, we had devotions. So we were fully immersed in this. And my buddy said, one of the counselors, he said, you should just try on God. I mean, it took me a while. It took me about 6 months to get with the program. And I finally did get with the program. I tried God on like a suit, and I said, man, this feels good. I think I look good. And I'm going along, and my life just radically changed. But as soon as I left the boys' home, all of that disappeared. And I went directly right into my old lifestyle. And I remember getting, I don't know, in 4th or 5th grade, I was in my 3rd different school from being expelled. I had a little old lady, the nuns, they'd whack you on the hands, back in capital punishment now, but they'd whack you on the hands, and I was laughing at this little old nun, and she looks at me and just looked, right into my soul, and she said, the only thing you bring to this world is pain, is suffering. And it stuck. And you hear a lot of things in your life that really hit home, and that one did, and I didn't want to be like that. And I decided to go into the Marine Corps, which my life radically changed again. But the cool thing is in between there, so as soon as I got expelled in, I think 3rd grade, what are you, about 9? Anybody else get expelled in 3rd grade? No, I'm the only one, all right. So I get expelled, and my best friend, kind of like foster family, he says, hey, there's a new girl that moved in down the road, and she's in my class, so we wanted to go check her out. I tell you, when I walked up to the front driveway, she was sitting there playing in the dirt. I tell you, it was like an angel. It was like time stood still, She brushes her fangs out of her eyes, and she looks up at me, and I was just speechless, stunned. I didn't even know what to say.
You're 9?
I'm 9. And she says, can I help you? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to marry you. So I tell you, that didn't go over so well. She didn't think I was serious. So she went and called her mom, told me I was creepy and stuff. And that was the first fight me and my brother we ever got into. It was the first fist fight, and it was over who was going to marry Denise. And I could fast forward that story. 31 years later, I did marry her, so she's mine now. And I kicked his butt then, and 31 years later, I redeemed myself. But there was a lot of roads in between there. The Marine Corps was probably My first love was my wife. My second love was obviously to my country. I joined the Marine Corps because I wanted to become something more than myself. I was a terrible person. I didn't want to be known as that angry kid that only brought pain and suffering everywhere he went. I didn't want to be defined by my past. I wanted to make something of myself. And I was a real big time loner. I never hung out with anybody because I didn't want to get close to anybody. Get close to somebody, then I have to move. And yeah, Marine Corps was the first place that I found a real family, and it turned into my life. The Constitution and supporting and defending the America really meant something to me. It was the first thing that I really belonged to. And I tell you, that best years of my life, I spent 20 years in the Marine Corps, and just having fun.
Yeah, I mean, you're known as coach, but that's a long career.
Yeah,
being a Marine.
It was good.
Yeah. So when you were a Marine, though, you weren't thinking, hey, I'm going to go be a coach.
No, I was a heathen. I lived for the world. I wanted to see what the world had to offer, and I thought I was very successful in the world. I had everything I think the world had to offer. It was, drinking, partying, fast cars. I mean, just the normal things in life. And I thought I measured all my success of how well I was doing in the Marine Corps. And I had no idea what was coming when I reconnected with my wife. Well, that girl that was 9. I met her right before I was getting ready to retire. And as soon as I saw her, here it is 31 years later, and she put on a couple pounds and had 4 kids and worked 80 hours a week. As soon as I saw her, right after she got off work, I mean, that was that girl that I fell in love with. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is my chance. So we started dating and proposed to her before she changed her mind. We got married, and I wasn't even saved. That was a crazy thing. I wasn't living for the Lord. She grew up in the church. She was one of those good, Christian girls. And here I am as heathen, and yeah, things weren't working out too good for us at the beginning, as you could probably mention. It's my 3rd marriage too, so I already screwed up 2 other ones. I had my son. I screwed up his life, so yeah, my life was pretty much a train wreck prior to coaching.
Wow. A lot of this I know, but I didn't know about that. So what happens after that? You're married, it's a bumpy road.
Yeah, I was really losing her. She just had a, what do they call it, a mini stroke, TIA or something like that, a mini stroke. And so she didn't have control of her emotions, and she got out of really horrible abusive marriage she was in. She stayed at women's shelters and stuff trying to get away from this guy, and finally escaped with her and the kids. And when we met up, she had a lot of scars, I would say, I didn't know how to overcome these. And I wanted this girl my whole entire life more than anything. This was my first love. And I didn't know how. I'm married to her, and I'm trying to raise her kids, and I'm screwing this up majorly. And I wasn't going to church every Sunday. She would ask, hey, do you want to go to church with us? I'm like, no, I'm going to watch a Seahawks game or work my truck. I'm going to do anything I can besides sit in some church somewhere. And one Sunday, our son said, well, if he doesn't have to go to church, why do I got to go to church? And I'm like, man, right out of kids' mouths, and it weighed on me. And I was like, okay. So went to church, started sitting there, and I tell you, I sat there for months, probably 6-8 months, with my arms crossed, and I'm just looking at that preacher. Oh, this guy just wants my money. I don't care what he's saying. And so things were unraveling between me and my wife. The more I tried to get close to her, the harder she pushed. I'd tear down a couple bricks, she put up 5 more. And we came to a point where it was, we were really so far from each other. And I was sitting in church, and he started playing the cool music, and there's something about music. I love to listen to a kid out there playing. There's something about music that resonates in my soul. And I was listening to this worship music, and next thing I know, I'm standing up. And keep in mind that me and my wife got this huge fight. on the way to church. I don't know if that's like a typical thing, but and so she's sitting there. It's so funny, you know, you get in a fight with your spouse, and she's sitting like this, you know, and give you the cold shoulder. But the music started playing, and my heart broke. And next thing I know, I'm walking up to the altar, and I just fall on my knees, and I'm sobbing in front of everybody. This is the first time I've ever cried, and I'm doing it in front of everybody. Talking about being a manly man. Oh man, it's horrible. I thought I was having a stroke or something. I had no idea what was happening. I'm just bawling my eyes out, and I say, God, if you give me my wife, I'll give you my life. And let me tell you, he was like, sold. And I didn't know what I was signing up for. I really had no idea, because I just got out of the Marine Corps. I just started working in a government job, and I was trying to figure out my life. At that point, when I finally said, God, I'm in, and if you fix me and my wife, I'm yours, I thought my life was going to be perfect. I had the perfect house. I had the perfect wife. I had the perfect kids. I had the perfect job. Everything was going smooth. And I sat here in my own little world. And then this guy comes up to me and said, hey, I'm out on a run one day. And he says, hey, I see your shirt. It's Bremerton shirt and the school. And he says, did you go to Bremerton? And I said, oh yeah, I graduated from there years ago. He goes, did you play ball? No, I was a wrestler. And he said, you ever think about coaching? I'm like, nope. Not in my cards, man. I'm here in my perfect little life. I don't want to have anything else to do with anything. I just wanted to, you know, live this perfectness. But boy, that guy turned into a stalker, and I think God put his driving route on my route. Every time I turned around, the guy was there. And my wife worked at the school district, so he was bugging her more than he was bugging me, but it was just nonstop. And finally one day she said, well, maybe God's trying to tell you something. And I was like, well, I don't know what it is, because one, I don't know anything about coaching. I never coached. And two, I don't know anything about football. Never really played football. I don't know any X's and O's. But there was something about the calling of that. They invited me to apply for the job. I finally went in on a Friday afternoon, and I went to the interview, and they thought it was a joke, because they were like, oh, what's your specialty? You know, the head coach. What's your specialty? Offensive guy, defensive guy? I'm like, yeah, none of those. He's like, whoa, well, I mean, what's your specialty? Special teams or something? And I'm going, nope. And he's looking around like thinking, where's the hidden camera for this thing? And so the athletic director, he goes, why am I interviewing this guy? And the athletic director has been stalking me, sitting over there in the corner, just smiling. He goes, tell him what you go bring to the program. And I was like, oh, well, team building, leadership, discipline. You know, I started rattling all the things off that you'd learn in the military. And they were like, we want you. Will you coach? And like any new, believer, well, give me the weekend to think about it and pray about it. And I went home, talked about it with my family, and in the middle of the night, Saturday nights at 1 o'clock in the morning, there's nothing on TV. I mean, you got 1,200 stations, and there's nothing on. And if there is something on, it's probably not worth watching to begin with. But I was flipping through, and I came across this movie, Facing the Giants. And let me tell you, I know their budget was probably maybe $50, $60. But let me tell you, it was like the hand of God reached through that TV set, grabbed my heart, threw me to the ground. And for the second time, I sound like a big baby. Second time in my life, I'm on my knees and I'm sobbing my eyes out. And I said, God, I hear it. I heard my calling for the first time. That was something so powerful. It was so cool. I thought the Marine Corps was my calling. I thought serving my country was my calling. This was a calling into my soul, not just my physical, but in my soul. And I said, Lord, I'm all in. I'll give you the glory after every game, just like in the movie Facing the Giants. And next thing I know, I was standing on a football field. Things were good. My life got a whole lot happier for a little bit there, for a little while.
How'd that work out in the beginning? I mean, you show up and the kids are waiting to be coached, and you're like leadership and...
Yeah, I'm not a yeller or a screamer. I find it's more effective if I just grab them by the face mask. You know, they got those little holes in the side of their helmet. Those are for me to whisper into their ears. And I got to know the kids and really cared about them. All the other coaches could just focus on X's and O's. And the only thing I had to do was worry about the kids. How was Johnny doing with mom, his girlfriend, his parents, all the things that kids go through. I got to be there for them. So that was the perfect place for me to be. Even though I was a train wreck as a dad, I really found my calling in helping these young men, because I didn't want any kid to go through what I went through alone. I wanted to contribute back to society. And I don't know, penance is a real thing. I don't know if it's biblical or not, but I tell you, it's something that I really felt like I needed to do. I was called to serve my country first, and then it was to serve my community. And I took that job very, very seriously, and I loved it. I didn't have to learn anything about X's and O's. I never learned anything in football whatsoever. I let them do that part, but I was a rah-rah guy, you know, when Johnny would lose his mind and throw his helmet across the field and cuss out the coaches. They'd send me out to go grab his head and screw it back on and dust him off and get him back out on the field. So my job was just the young men, and it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect life.
So after every game, you would just take a knee?
Yeah, it was no big deal. That was my covenant with God, and I would just walk out to the 50. So when the two teams come together, everybody's been to a football game, high school, two teams come together, they all shake hands on the 50-yard line. I talk to the other coaches, and I'm standing out on the 50-yard line and just turn and face the scoreboard and take a knee, and I'm just like, God, that was awesome. Thanks for letting me be part of it. And I'm out. I mean, I'm not a great prayer, so I didn't know what I was doing. I was just thanking God and let me be part of it. After about, 6 months, I think it was, the kids said, Coach, what are you doing out there after the game? And I said, well, I'm just thanking God for what you guys were doing and that I got to be part of it. And there was a couple believers on the team, and they said, well, can we join you? I'm like, this is America. What do you mean, can you join me? Of course you. And kids have all the rights in the world. You guys can do whatever you want to do. And this is your team. I don't care. And so they started coming out, and it kind of grew. And it was hit and miss over the years, but it kept growing. And, if we lost by 60 points, I tell you, kids are not grateful. They don't want to be thankful for anything. They want to go home and cry on their girlfriend's shoulder. And same thing goes if they win by 60 points, they kind of lose their mind and they just want to go celebrate. But my steadfast thing was just taking a knee, not a big deal. I think the longest prayer I probably ever did was probably maybe 30, 40 seconds. Somebody got hurt, pray that they, get healed along the way. Gave him a bunch of shout outs like, man, number 40 really knocked the poo out of that kid. And I mean, it was the coach, it was a Marine. I didn't know all the right things to say. But everything was from the heart and just being thankful for being part of it.
I mean, Tim Tebow took a knee. I don't understand.
Yeah. And maybe that's where I picked up some of it. I mean, it's nothing. Praying on a football field is nothing new. And so I was doing that until 2015, and I'm glad you didn't say Kaepernick. But he stole it from me because he was in 2016. I was in 2015, but I might have stole it from Tebow. So, yeah, I mean, football and prayer has always been tradition. It's always been part of society, just same as the beginning of our country.
Yeah. So what happens? What was the event that took place that this became an issue?
It was really, really, really weird. We were at a game. It was an away game, and it was Battle of Buckland Hill, and we, it's a double team where all the people are there from two different regions, and it's kind of the big deal in our hometown. We lost, and we still prayed, and the other team, one of the athletic directors or somebody from other school district, they saw what we were doing and saw this moment of prayer. I mean, we had fights in the game, fist fights between the kids. But after this game, we all came together and everybody took a knee. I hold the helmets up of each team, and I just thank God and give good shout outs there. And one of the people from the other school districts saw that and felt compelled. You see something, you say something. Called the principal of our school and said, hey, I've never seen this before in a public school, but what your football program is doing is really awesome. So the principal, a good friend of mine, he got concerned and wanted to make sure that we're following the protocols of the school. There's only one policy in the whole entire state of Washington. It's pretty much vague just about everywhere I found out. But in the state of Washington, you cannot encourage nor discourage kids in prayer. It's the only policy that they have. And I know my wife looked it up and made sure I understood that part, which was fine because I didn't care if they came out or not. It was not a big deal. I was like, well, I never asked anybody to come out. I've never told anybody to come out. And so I'm not encouraging nor discouraging them. And it happened really, things go really sideways at times. And it's so hard to keep track of all those moving parts because the principal went to the athletic director and said, hey, I want you to follow Kennedy and find out what he's doing, how he's doing it, make sure that we're doing everything right according to the policy. All right, well, you know, the athletic director freaks out a little bit because the principal's asking about one of the coaches. Athletic director goes to the head coach and says, Kennedy's getting us in trouble for praying. The head coach flips out, goes to the other 5 coaches and says, well, Kennedy's getting us in trouble. And it just totally got blown completely out of proportion. And they told me that I needed to stop praying. I was like, this is just dumb. I mean, this is America. You can't tell me where I can pray and when I can't pray. I know the Constitution. I know the Bill of Rights. I know what it says. And this is a free country, so I'm going to exercise that right. Yeah, I didn't know where that was going to lead me. And that led down some really, really wild roads.
I read somewhere I must be fast forwarding some, but that you had posted something on Facebook and.
Yeah. So the next game they said, hey, you can't pray. And I was like, what are you going to do? You know, what can you do? And they were like, well, they could fire you. And I was like, they're not going to fire me over a prayer. Give me a break. And I went out there just same as always. I didn't know if I was going to pray with the team or not. I had all these things going in my head. I went into triple overtime, so it didn't look like I was going to have an opportunity to pray. And the athletic director was standing right beside me, and he goes, boy, we sure dodged a bullet on that one. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, you didn't have an opportunity to play because, you know, that no time left. And I go, it's funny how God works those things out. I walk over, shake hands with all the team, and I'm talking to the other coaches, and one of the opposing players comes up and he goes, Coach, who's using my helmet in prayer? And I go, absolutely, young man. And I took it, my team came out, we did the prayer, and I see the athletic director doing that little off, and I'm like, you know that sick feeling, like you know you just got caught doing something wrong, and he goes walking off, and I'm like, he was really serious about this. And I look over at the head coach, and he mouths, they're going to fire you. And then I felt sick in my stomach. And I got my kids all taken care of, got them on the bus. We were heading back to the school, and I got on the power of the internet, and I got on Facebook or Instagram or one of them. And I made one post that said, I think I just got fired for praying. I posted, turned my phone off, and I was like, okay, I'm not even going to think about this. The next morning, my phone is blowing up. You ever turn off your phone for 12 hours and, oh my gosh, it's going crazy. My wife's phone's going crazy and we don't know what's happening. And my friend calls me from the East Coast in Virginia and said, you're on ESPN. And I'm like, what? And I'm thinking, hey, this is cool. Maybe, I mean, it was a great triple overtime. I mean, it was a great football game. I go, maybe they picked up, you know, the game. And so we flip it on and Coach, fire for praying. I'm like, oh, cool. You know, my wife was flipping out. She's in HR, so she's having a mild heart attack again, giving her a stroke. And things really started unraveling there. I thought we were going to be able to work this out as adults, you know. I mean, these people are my friends. They're not my enemies. They're not coming against me or anything. So the athletic or the superintendent and I sat down, we had talks like, how are we going to navigate this? What are we going to do about this? And I was like, well, what's the policy say? And he says, it's this. And I said, well, I'm following that. And he says, well, as long as it doesn't interfere with your coaching duties, we should be okay. Well, by then it's already out in the news, and news shows up for the next football game. And coach, what are you going to do? Are you going to pray? Are you going to pray? I assume so. I really don't know. Well, what are you going to pray? It was weird. We had Fox and CBS and ABC and NBC and all these people that are showing up. And then we get all these protesters at the game, and we get all these supporters. It was probably, I would say, 90% supporters and only 10% people that were coming against us. But you know how loud they are. They squeaky wheel. But it made really good news and stirred up our community. It's a small community, 30,000 people if one of the needy carriers are in, which brings in about 5,000 people. So it's not a huge town, working class town. So this is the biggest thing that's happened in Bremerton ever. And it's on every news channel. So the school was under immense amounts of pressure. We were under our football program was, and we didn't know how to navigate this. What do you do in that point? And so they gave me another letter, and they said, just stop praying with the kids and everything should be fine. And I'm like, well, that's unfortunate. This all started from a compliment because this was something good. And now you're telling me to stop that. But hey, it's your school, your rules. I don't want to fight with you guys. These are my friends. We spend holidays together. We do pumpkin carving. We have Christmas parties together with the community. These people are my coworkers for almost a decade. This is 8 years into coaching. So I've been doing this for 8 years. And now all of a sudden it's become a problem. I just, even to this day, can't wrap my brain around it. And they said, well, just stop praying with the kids. So I did. I stopped praying with my team. I never prayed with a single person from Bremerton ever again. But the opposing team came out to the next game, and they all joined me in the prayer. Now the school's freaking out. What do you do with that? I'm like, what, do you want me to control these kids now too? What do you do with this? And the school, they gave me a third letter and said, to eliminate all this, we'll give you another chance. You could go pray anywhere else, but you can't pray where people can see you. And as a believer in the Lord, I didn't know what to do with that. What do you do with that? Because, yeah, I can pray anywhere. God doesn't care whether you pray. It makes absolutely no difference. But the Marine inside, I was an American before I was a follower of the Lord. So as an American and as a Marine, this did not sit well with me. And I had the hardest time. I might not have the best morals or standards, but I got a set of principles. And this is one of them that I was willing to die on this hill over something as simple as a 15-second prayer on the 50-yard line. And it meant the world to me for the fact that you can't tell an American citizen where, when, and how they're supposed to exercise their faith. I don't care what faith that is. If they're Jewish, if they're Muslim, if they're Buddhist, I don't care. If they're a person, no faith. America is the land of the free. You read the First Amendment, it's pretty clear. It doesn't start out saying you have the freedom of speech. It says that you have the free exercise and that government can't tell you how you to do it. So it made perfect sense to me that I didn't understand how we're at such odds over this, over something as simple as a 15-second prayer, even just by myself. And they finally gave me the whatever you call it, the ultimatum. They said, if you pray, then we're going to put you on administrative leave. And so they gave me the letter of direction. It says, if you do it, you're gone. And I didn't know what I was going to do. Because only thing I wanted to do was just coach football. I didn't want any of this stuff. I wanted to have a simple life. My days of battle were over. And this seemed so dumb to fight over. And I really was struggling with that in the flesh of what do I do? Is this about me? Is this about my pride? Or is this about the Constitution? And so I had all these internal struggles and battles going on. My wife, of course, working in HR, was very adamant that I give up the prayer and stop all this nonsense. And she couldn't understand that why this was so important to me. And I didn't expect her to, and I didn't expect anybody else. I guess if you serve the country, you have a different perspective maybe, but it just didn't sit right. So when I was telling my team, hey, if I pray after this game, they're gonna let me go. And our team captain stood up and said, hey, coach. He goes, something in my throat now. He looks at me. I'm sitting in front of the whole team, and he said, he goes, coach, can't you just get in? It'd be easy. We talked about this as a team. We want you to stop fighting and give in. And I tell you, I knew it was like a bolt of lightning right through my entire body and soul. And I said, no. I tell you guys to fight every Friday night. I don't care if your mom and dad are getting divorced. I don't care if you don't know where you have your next meal. I don't care if your dad just got locked up in prison. This is your place to battle. And now I expect them to give everything. Now I'm going to give up the fight because it's become uncomfortable for me. What message does that send these young men? Did I tell them to fight and to be... That's my whole job in life, was to take these young boys and make them into better young men. Now all of a sudden I'm going to be, the hypocrite? It says, unless it gets tough, unless there's your job's on the line, or, you could get dock pay, or this or that. No, you would do what's right no matter what, even if it's not popular. And so I knew at that second I was going to pray on that football field, and I did, and they gave me my letter and put me on suspension right after that game.
So what happens next? I mean, obviously this goes all the way to Supreme Court, but it wasn't like overnight.
No, it wasn't. First Liberty Institute, there was tons of people that were calling different law groups. I don't know all the legal names and stuff, but there was a guy, Jay Sekulow, who called me up, and he's like, hey, I'm Jay Sekulow. I'd like to represent you. And I'm like, no thanks. Hung up on him, and I don't know who these people are. Well, a friend of another thing that I could point to God's fingerprints on all of it, but I had a friend who I coached with who went to high school and played football with him, ended up going, becoming a lawyer. He saw what was going on Facebook and everything, and called my buddy. My buddy called me, so a friend of a friend. Of course I'm going to talk to this guy. And he says, well, there's this group that represents people in religious liberties. Would you be willing to talk to them? And I was like, well, you're a friend of my friend, so sure, I'll do that. And he goes, good, I'm at a law conference with them, and he put me on the phone with them, right on the spot. I'm like, and the first thing the guy says is, first question I need to know, are you one of those religious wackos? And I start laughing. I go, no, does that disqualify me? I don't know this stuff. Do you need to be a real religious person? Do you represent me? It was an odd question. And I say, no, I'm actually probably one of the worst Christians you've ever seen. And he goes, all right, tell me your story. And I did. And he goes, so you never asked the kids to pray? Nope. You never demanded them to? Nope. Never once. And I went 8 years. I went through every single scenario, and I was calling people up, all these kids up over the years, and I was like, did I ever ask you guys to pray? Did I ever tell you to pray? Did we even talk about God at any time? I'm really doing some soul searching here. I couldn't find a single kid that felt like he needed to pray, felt like he was pressured to pray. If they didn't want to pray, it was fine. I had 2 of them over the years that came up to me and said, Coach, I'm not into that stuff. And I said, all right, well, what do you want to do? Well, I'll take care of the equipment or hang out with the coaches. I made 2 of those guys my team captains because they showed leadership to come up and confront me and say, hey, I don't believe in this. That's what I want. I want people to be true. I want them to be real and have the adult conversations. And we did. We were a family. And it was just so weird that all communications broke down. The school district, their lawyers got involved, and they gave me, I don't know what you call it, cease and desist or something like that, and where I wasn't allowed to talk to the school district anymore, and I needed to talk to them through lawyers. And I'm thinking, I can't even talk to my own employer? I mean, this is so bizarre to me over something so dumb. And so First Liberty Institute out of Plano, Texas, they started representing me. They wrote a very firm letter to the school district saying, you guys are in breach of the First Amendment. Here's all the statutes. Here's all this other stuff, legal mumbo jumbo stuff. Gave it to the school, but I found out that the school districts up there are all being represented by one of two groups. I can't remember. There's just like Separation of Church and State or the Freedom from Religious Foundation. One in these groups. But they're the ones who fund all the school districts legal in the state of Washington. So there's other things at play here. This isn't just, I found out that it wasn't the school district, it wasn't the school board, it wasn't the superintendent. It was this outside group who represents them, who really runs our school. And that's a scary thing for me. It terrifies me to think that there's other people that are running. I expect our superintendent and our school board, who are elected officials, to be the ones running our school district. Nope, as soon as the lawyer speaks, they can't say anything against it. So it turned into an ugly fight. We took them to court, and it wasn't a quick thing. So it took eight years, but we went to Supreme Court twice. So we lost, and we lost. 7 times in a row, we kept hearing no. And that's where things got really crazy, because it wasn't just where they said no. The first guy said, well, no, because of the political climate in the state of Washington. And I'm going, the climate? I mean, isn't justice supposed to be blind? The whole idea of, that is where you base things on the law, not the political climate of things, which ended up being a gift to give us a appeal. So we appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, or 12th, 9th, one of those. But they're the goofy ones on the West Coast. The whole left coast is crazy. And they run the whole entire left coast. And it went before them, and I was like, finally, we're getting someplace. And it was a 3-judge panel, and the lead judge, who was a conservative, who was appointed by Bush, I want to say. Might even been Reagan, I don't remember. He had a real axe to grind. First thing out of his mouth is that I used to be a school district lawyer. I represented school districts for cases like this. And I'm going, how is this not a conflict of interest? Are you kidding me? So this guy's already got a bias against me. And it's not like on TV, Law and Order, something happens, boom, boom, next day, everything is full work down court. No, it's so, I was so let down by the way that the justice system is. And when that guy ruled, he didn't just rule no. He said that now you got to wrap your brain around this, any display of religion, not Christianity, religion, in the public square are grounds for termination. In America. And so when I didn't find this out until, as these things are going on, lawyers and judges make up most of our laws. We think, the First Amendment says we have the freedom of speech, and the second, we could carry guns and all this. No, all these lower courts make decisions which affects everybody else. So now it's on the books that anybody could be fired for any display. Now, I wear a cross on my knee. I've got a cross even tattooed on my arm and, on my wrist too. And that this could get me fired? I'm thinking about the lunch lady who might be wearing a crucifix or, earrings. What about a Jewish person wearing the yarmulke? I mean, if you let that thing just settle, any display in the public square, not just schools, the public square, that is terrifying to me. And that's stuck and so we appealed to the Supreme Court. They didn't take it because we didn't have enough. They don't rule on certain things. They only rule on other things. I don't know, legal stuff. Should have brought my lawyer. He can explain it. He loves that crap. But so we were sitting there and we started over. We went back to the same judge to repeat the whole process.
Did this start in 2016?
2015.
2015. And then I read that even Trump came out 2016 and said this is absurd.
Absurd. And 36 senators, numerous governors, pro athletes. They have these things called amica briefs that is really a boring thing of just saying, a friend of the court, they write a letter on your behalf. And we had hundreds of them signing on to these things. And that was really cool that, Trump started telling my story. I went to an event that I wasn't even supposed to be at. One guy couldn't make it, so my buddy invited me. We were sitting in Washington, D.C., and I'm sitting in the very back of the room. All the big cameras are up behind me, and so they're all talking. It's for as admirals and generals to get the military buy-in why they should. It's like a town hall. Why should they elect Trump? And they put him on burning platforms. Boy, I was so impressed. He actually got a couple standing ovations from the answers he gave with all these military guys. You hear so much on the news of this and that and this and that. When you actually hear what he said and what he means to say and the rest of it into context, boy, that guy was sharp. And then he said, yeah, matter of fact, reminds me of this story about this Marine up in the state of Washington who was fired for praying. And my buddy, the lawyer, was sitting up in front, and he turns around and he goes, he's talking about you. And I'm like, I know. And so some guy interrupts him, and you don't interrupt Trump. Word to wise, don't interrupt Trump when he's on his speech. And he goes, this guy interrupts him, excuse me, Mr. Trump, that coach is right here in the back of the room. And it was like the parting of the Red Sea. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, and he goes, oh, he's here? And he looks over his aide like, you're fired. And he goes, well, I don't want to tell your story. Coach, stand up. And so I'm standing up in the back of this room, 300 people in there. I'm not mic'd up, and I'm having to yell across the room. All the cameras are behind me trying to get their pictures on me, but they're up above me, so they only got the audio of it. Yeah, but Trump was pretty upset about that. Oh, it's horrible. I wish I could do an impression of him, but horrible. It's horrible. And he invited me back to the Oval Office. He signed a religious freedom executive order and invited a bunch of people from all different faiths. So there was probably 15 of us or so sitting in there in the Oval Office, and he signed this religious thing for us, and we all got to tell our story again. And he's like, oh yeah, I remember you, Coach. And then he invited me again to his last town hall meeting. And what's that? Recently, yeah. And it was so funny because I'm sitting there and I'm sitting in the front row now, and I'm like, well, I've already talked to him. I don't have to talk to him again. I could just sit here and listen to everybody else talk. And one of the guys that was moderating the thing goes, Coach, you're going to be the last question. And I'm like, I don't even have a question. I'm just here to watch this thing. I was put on the spot. But I made up something like, you did a lot for us during your first term. What are you going to do in the next term for us from religious liberty? And he goes, well, I did a hell of a lot for you, Coach. And I was like, yeah, you did. And we started this conversation again. It was just, it was crazy. So yeah, this whole thing is just so bizarre. I mean, I'm a high school football coach and a Marine. I'm a knuckle dragger. Who am I to be sitting there talking, shop with the President of the United States? That's just crazy talk.
Then you give him a little punch in the arm.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're walking out of I'm not even going to tell him what I said, but I was walking out, and I wanted to be the last one because I wanted to have the opportunity to share what was on my heart with him. And so I walked by, and he was talking to somebody else, and he was sitting at the desk in the Oval Office, and I wanted to get his attention, so I punched him in the shoulder. And Secret Service doesn't like that. They all come up on me, right up on me, and I was like, you guys better back up or we're going to have problems here. And so Trump turned around to see what was all the commotion and who just hit him. And he goes, oh, it's okay. He goes, hey, what's up, Coach? And I was like, well, I just got to tell you, you got a heck of a set on you, buddy. He shook his hand. And he said, You do too, coach. And you just started laughing. It was a cool moment. And my wife and my lawyer were mortified. They were like, you did not just tell the President of the United States that. And I was like, cojones, yeah, huge. They're huge. See, I'm not refined. I am not polished.
Now you're you didn't finish with the Supreme Court counsel.
Oh, yeah. So we went back. The first judge, he punted. He's like, I'm at the end of my career. And instead of standing up and doing what was right, he just punted and said, this will go on up and let somebody else make this decision. So it went back before the Court of Appeals. They doubled down. And not only did they say that I was a horrible person, horrible coach, the guy actually read the thing in it, and it says that the way that he reads his Bible, it says to pray like this. So a sitting judge is now telling me the way that I'm supposed to be praying. I'm sitting going, is that why we're fighting here? Is because this is what got us into this to begin with? Now you're telling me how I'm supposed to do this? So I was furious, and my lawyers were just smiling. I was like, we just lost, dude. He goes, that was a gift. And I was like, how do you figure that's a gift? And he goes, tell me what law in the world is going to follow up with that, saying that you're a bad person, bad coach, and you're a bad Christian because of these reasons. And I was like, well, it doesn't sound like the law to me. And he says, it's not. So that was really a gift for us, for the Supreme Court. And I wish I had a really good story about the Supreme Court to tell, but it was post-COVID. It was just, Ginsburg was still on there, and I think her and Sotomayor, or whatever her name is, they were really big on masking up and everything. And so I wasn't even allowed to go into the Supreme Court. My own trial that I've been going to for 8 years, I wasn't even allowed to attend it. I had to sit in a building across the street. So they allowed two lawyers from each side, and they allowed all the press, but not me. I'm still trying to wrap my brain. I don't understand how that works. So I wish I had a great story about the Supreme Court.
I didn't have the N45, I think.
Yeah.
You were double masked.
Yeah, I would have walked in with a bodysuit if it would have made a difference, but yeah, no. So, but they heard it. They did a great job. We had Paul Clement, who has presented in front of, he did a pro bono for free, which I found out is what that means. And he has argued more at the Supreme Court than any other lawyer in history. He's at over 120 or something like that. And so dude is the number one lawyer in America. And his wife heard this case and said, she doesn't get into any of his law stuff. It's like when I go talk about marine stuff, my wife tunes it all out. She doesn't want to hear it. But his wife, Paul's wife, said, you need to take this case. And so there was players at work even on our side to make all these fingerprints. I call them God's fingerprints on it all the way through. And he did a great job, and we ended up winning 6-3, not only for the religious liberties, but for the freedom of speech, because they go hand in hand with each other. And that's what the most beautiful thing is when they wrote it up, is saying that prayer is doubly protected under the free speech and the free exercise. So they made it very clear that prayer is allowed in the public square, and you can pray in public and at a public school. So that was just kind of the icing on the cake, that it wasn't for nothing, that 8 years of fighting, me and my wife almost got divorced over this. And because when I said she worked at HR, she was the HR director. So she essentially had to fire me, and I had to sue her. Now, I'm not great at marriage advice, but don't sue your spouse. It's not good for the family. Let me tell you, it was rough. We came to the point where I was walking out. If anybody's ever seen the show Friends, they were on a break. We were getting ready to go on a break, and I was walking out the door, and God showed up as I was walking out the door. Wife crying on the bed. I packed a couple things, and I said, I can't sit here and hurt you anymore. And I started walking out of the room, and she's bawling her eyes out on the bed. and I get a text, and I think, it's my stupid lawyers, what do they want? And I'm really mad, and it's a video. It's a video of the Kendrick brothers, the guys who did Facing the Giants. He's standing on the 50-yard line of where they filmed Facing the Giants, and he goes, "Coach, I'm Alex Kendrick. I'm the guy who was in Facing the Giants." He goes, "I know you and your wife are going through some struggles right now. I want you to know that we're praying for you and that we're behind you." Wow. And I ended up falling down my stairwell. And I ripped the banister off the wall, so I'm making this huge commotion going down. And I landed at the bottom, and my wife comes running out, and she's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I couldn't speak, and for the third time in my life, I'm bawling my eyes out, and I can't even breathe, and I can't talk to her, and handed her my phone, and she was like, "What do you want me to call 911? And I managed to get up, play. And so we sat there, tried to eat each other's arms for, I don't know, about an hour. It was the first time my wife realized that we were on the same page and this was the same calling. We were just looking at it from two different lenses. It was like the scales fell off of her eyes, and she could instantly see that this was this rebellious teenager that she grew up with, and the defiant one. This was a God thing. And we sat there and just cried in each other's arms. And somewhere in the Bible where it says to become one, that's where that meant it to me, is that we became one. We became a solid foundation, and our thoughts were wrapped around God, because I put God first. That was one thing I can't even believe I forgot that part, but that's sort of the straw that was breaking us. She says, "What's more important, this fight or our marriage?" And I had to say, this fight is more important. And that's not what a wife wants to hear. But when God called me to do something, or my country calls me to do something, I am going to do it. I'm going to stand up, and I'm going to fight for what is right, even if it costs me everything. And it almost cost me everything. But God showed up at the 11th hour and 59 seconds. And it's never when I want him to. That's the thing with him. He's pretty weird about those things. It's not when I want him to, but when I need him to. That's when he shows up. And he has shown up every single time and has been faithful, just because of me being faithful and taking a knee and standing up for what was right.
So many questions. So I was going to say, why was this so important? But this Supreme Court case is what made this now a law.
Yep. Yeah. So
your case turned into a law.
Right. So in 1971, there was this really horrible case called Lemon versus Kurtzman or something boring. I can't even tell you 5 Supreme Court cases except for that one and like Roe v. Wade. I mean, there's like 2 there that I know. Now mine 3. But there was this case, Lemon, and it was all about religious liberties, and it had the thing called the Lemon test. And you have to pass a 3-pronged test, which was impossible for anybody to pass. And it was designed so nobody could pass it. So for the past 50 years, in most of our lifetime here, have all been under the assumption of Lemon, where you can't pray at schools, you can't do it in public, separation of church and state, all these things that you hear that aren't listed anywhere, but this is where it all stems from. So our case overturned 50-year precedents of religious freedoms. There was over 7,000 cases that have been stifled in religious liberty, not just Christianity, we're talking all across America, have been stifled and not been able to pass this test. Now there's 7,000 of them, like the 10 Commandments, when they started ripping those out of the buildings. Now all those could come back up. Everywhere you, like menorahs, and where you see even Christmas trees or the nativity scenes, people were having problems with that. All this fell right back on the Lemon, and Lemon covered all of that. So that is all gone now. So if you had the 10 Commandments at your school, you could bring it back. If it's at the courthouse, bring it back in. Anything that was there, so this will overturn 7,000 of those. And so right now we have more religious freedom, which I still can't wrap my brain around. We have more religious freedom today than we've had in the past 50 years. So we reset the clock to the way it's supposed to be. But most people don't know. I mean, I don't know how many people here followed the story, but did you know you have more religious freedom now than you've had in 50 years? These are the things that aren't being told in the American public. And that's why I love coming and talking to people, is because we need to know what our rights are as Americans. And we have to be able to stand up for those. Now, I think it was by design they made the First Amendment the way that they did, and they put religious freedom first. Now, if they started taking that one away, it's just dominoes. You take one away, the next one follows the next one, and it just exponentially just blows up all over the place. And that's where we can see it as a society of how messed up a lot of things are right now. But it only takes us to stand up together and do the right thing. And I don't know what the right thing is. I most of the time I have no idea. But I knew that this was my calling, and I was going to stand up for it because this was the right thing to do. And it's turned out to be this huge blessing and really impacted the United States as far as religious liberty. This has been the biggest case for religious liberty in our lifetime, more than the overturning of Roe versus Wade, because that just punted it down to the state level. This freed it up all across the United States, just blanketed it. So, pretty cool place to be right now.
Yeah. And now this has become your life's work, your mission.
Right. We moved down to Florida probably 4.5 years ago. My wife's dad was not doing well health-wise and had a bunch of problems. He got lung cancer, got divorced, lost his business, and his son was murdered all in a 1-week period. That's a real bad week. And so my wife and I, we didn't even think about it. We both resigned from our jobs up to Washington, and we moved down to Pensacola, Florida here. And
The press doesn't really cover that either. They make it sound like, oh, you got your job back and then you quit, almost like you're being a clacker. You know what I mean?
oh my goodness, let me tell you that. I knew that it wasn't going to be when I went, if I got my job back, I would be facing my own giants again. I knew that was not going to be a pleasant thing. I had this guy, Franklin Graham. I don't know if you know who he is, but I didn't know who he was. But he came up to us, my wife and I pulled us off to the side, and he said, Coach, I need to talk to you. This has been on my heart. I've been talking to the Lord about this. And I'm like, well, this guy's pretty religious. I should probably listen to him. And he says, you need to go back and face your giant. Even if you go back for one game, you need to go back even just once. Put your knee on that 50-yard line and thank God for giving you this battle and getting you back to where you were. To put you back to where you originally started, make you whole. And that was deep. That was huge. So this is 9 football seasons later that I'm going back to the school that I was fired from. I go to the front desk and I ring the bell and my heart's beating a million miles an hour. And this poor receptionist goes, can I help you, sir? And I said, yeah, I'm here to be reinstated. She goes, for what? Football coach. She goes, who are you? And I'm like, oh yeah, you probably wouldn't know. This was almost a decade now. Yeah. I said, I'm Coach Kennedy. And then she was like, oh, I'll be right back. And then the building explodes and you just hear them rumbling everywhere. They gave me my letter and I went down, a reinstatement, and I went down and met the head coach and he was not happy. Good, solid guy. And I can understand. Can you imagine how rough that would be of having to take somebody back? Have to. And he was forced to take me back. So he said, I have no say in this. You have no say in this. You're going to be my coach, and we'll make the best that we can. So I went back, spring ball. That was at spring ball. And the school district said, oh, but you can't go onto the field until you complete these things. And so I completed those. And they go, oh, but you got to complete these things. For 2 weeks, I got hit with red tape, and I didn't even get a step on the football field. I watched a lot of the practices, but I wasn't even allowed to interact with the team whatsoever. Couldn't step on the field, introduce myself or anything. And I said, well, coach, we'll try again in the fall. I went back for the first day of fall camp. I moved from Florida back up to Washington, had a place, expected to do a football season. Who knows how long I was called back to go for. But I knew it wasn't going to be a parade and a picnic. They didn't roll out the red carpet, and it was they made it tough. They made it really tough. They told me that or I wasn't allowed to go into the coach's office. I wasn't allowed to go into the locker room unless another coach was with me. I wasn't allowed to go to any of the functions. The kids, they have meals with the parents and breakfasts for the seniors and stuff. I wasn't allowed to go to those. I wasn't allowed to talk to the kids. They made it just not fun. They took all the fun out of coaching. And I mean, the coaching staff was doing the best that they could. I don't fault them, but the school made it so terrible. They put all these stipulations on and started telling me, well, after the game, if you pray, you have to be in a 25-foot bubble. Nobody can be around you. And I'm going, oh, we want you to wait 20 minutes till after everybody leaves, the last kid leaves the field. And I was like, guys, this is what got us into trouble to begin with. I said, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. You do what you're going to do. And I went back, and the game was, that was such a blessing. The game was so good. And all this time, this is 9 football seasons, I've been fighting to get back onto the field. And after the game was so good, I walked out to the 50-yard line after the kids shook hands, and nobody even noticed. I took a knee. The world didn't explode. Nothing came on fire. All the 150 security guards that were surrounding the entire perimeter, nobody tried to rush the field. Nobody even noticed. And that was my answered prayer of being able to go back and make me whole and to be the way it should have been to begin with, which it was. No big deal. A guy just taking a knee on a football field. Nobody would ever notice, just exercising his rights. So that was the icing on the cake that made it perfect. And I didn't know how long we were going to stay. My wife's dad got some test results back, and that guy's falling apart. And so this was the first decision my wife and I got to make. And after that game, I was like, my heart's not in it. I did what I was supposed to do. Let's let the school heal, and let's go live our life. And I resigned after about midweek after that first game, and came back to Florida. And this is what I do: is just come and talk to people and encourage them to stand up and do what's right. Because I don't know what is right, but we all have that sense of what's right and wrong. And it's those little bitty tiny things that we let slide all the time because we don't want to make a ripple. We don't want to make a wave. And that's why we are where we are as a society, is because we let all those little tiny things keep building and building. And if you don't have that moral foundation or whatever that is where you stand on and you keep backing up, there's only so far you can go. And if you're at the edge of the cliff or your back's against the wall, there's no other place to go. We will have to end up fighting. And doesn't mean like, taking up arms. But we have to take a stand, or we just get run over. And you will end up losing all your rights. I just made a trip to Canada. Scary place. I hear all these people, Trump gets elected, I'm going to move to Canada. It's become my mission to go to Canada and free Canada. I cannot believe what a socialist country it is. I had no idea. Everything is state run. It's so crazy up there. They were like, yeah, if you're saying the things that I'm saying here tonight in public, I'll get you arrested in 5 years in prison. And I'm like, and I can't say, what are you talking about? We got the freedom of speech. It's not America. So yeah, I'm going to go get arrested up in Canada one of these days. That's my goal. It's an international incident. Don't tell my wife that.
We're going to wrap up, but do you have a a favorite quote that you lean on whenever you're going through some times of trouble?
Yeah, and that I'm not a great Bible scholar whatsoever, so I had to put it on my arm. It's 2 Timothy 4:7, and it's so simple, because I mean the Bible's full of a million quotes and phrases and verses or whatever they're called, but love God, love others are the two things I try to live by. But this has been my mantra and what I've been standing for, and has kept me going all these years. Every time I felt like I wanted to quit, which felt like every day I didn't want to do this fight, but it's fight the good fight, finish the race, and remain faithful. And I think at the end of the day that God will look at me when I eventually get there, and he'll say, "You did all right, kid. You did all right." And so because of that, I will fight that fight, and I will finish the race. And with the help of everybody else, I remain faithful.
Incredibly inspiring story. I mean, we get bombarded by so many narratives online, social media, and all these things that even politically you feel like there's nothing I can do as a single individual, and you've proved that wrong in your story. So I'm just thankful for you standing up, fighting a good fight. So you have a book and a movie.
Yeah, Average Joe came out. We did. They wanted to do the movie first, but COVID hit, and Writers Guild or whatever that is went on strike, and so everything was put off to the side. And we wrote the book, and books always tell more than what the movie is. But they made a movie. Eric Close plays me. Amy Actor plays my wife. And it really shows the relationship between me and my wife, our relationship, our love of our country and America, and what real life is all about. It's not one of those. I didn't want it to be a cheesy film like, sorry, Facing the Giants, but I didn't want it to be cruddy. I wanted it to be good. That was my biggest fear, is that people would walk out and go, "That sucked." But it's got 98% approval rate on Rotten Tomatoes, which is higher than I think Top Gun is right now. So I mean and that's obviously me. I don't star in it for sure, and it's just it's a real. If you want to have a great date night, watch out with your spouse. It's streaming now. You can buy a DVD and all that kind of stuff, but. It's worth watching. If you hate it, then I'll refund you $5 or something. I think I can afford that here. I think there's a few people.
Thank you so much, Joe, for joining us. We're going to open it up for some Q&A. One thing I just want to leave with parting thought here. You'd mentioned more than once about your parenting. How has this all impacted your parenting now? Like, who are you now?
I wish I was my wife. I think it was year 2 or 3 into coaching. She looked at me and she said, "I wish you were half a bit of a dad as you are a coach." And that's one thing that I have really failed at is my own kids. And I don't want to blame it on not having parental people or anything like that. I do got a good relationship with them now, but I wasted so much time in not hugging my kids and telling them that I love them. And now I'm trying to make up for it, but here they are, 30 years old now. So, but it's never too late to start. And I actually, this has gotten me a lot closer. All of our kids came down to the premiere of the movie, and it was the first time that my kids came up to me and he said, "Dad, I'm proud of you. That's awesome, man. That's pretty cool." That was the first time I've ever reached out to 2 of my kids, 2 of my sons I had been at odds with for so long. But thanks for bringing that up, jerk. Thanks.
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, tough Marine up here. You have good kids.
Well, thanks for your honesty. It's much appreciated. And there's so many voices out in the world, and this is a good message to share, so appreciate you.
Thank you, brother.